When you touch soil, it's amazing, this connection again, there's serotonin's released, right? Soil just touching soil can impact your mood, can impact levels of anxiety. I should have probably eaten a quarter pound of soil here before I started. But it can impact so much of what you actually see and feel and is connected to your gut. So soil is the piece that I think that differentiates us and it connects us to all of agriculture around the world. The principles that we're talking about here about organic agriculture and agroecology and permaculture all have the same fundamentals. People around the world touch their soil.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast. I'm Linley Dixon, co-director of the Real Organic Project. We're a grassroots, farmer-led movement with an add-on organic food label to distinguish organic crops grown in healthy soils and organic livestock raised on well-managed pasture, all without synthetic fertilizers and toxic chemicals. You just heard from Paul Muller of Real Organic Certified Full Belly Farm in Northern California. Paul was speaking at our Churchtown Dairy conference this September, where he gave a talk called Cultivating Affection. Paul and his wife, Drew, really believe in the positive power that growing and sharing food brings to strengthening communities. Their successful farm, operating at scale in its 5th decade, and now includes their children, is proof that they're onto something great.
Speaker Paul Muller has a ton of heart. When I first met his wife, Drew, she drew a big heart in the sand, and she said, farming is love. And when you go to Full Belly, you feel that more and more the longer you spend there. It's a beautiful place. Paul?
Thanks. Thank you. I think so. Can everybody just take a deep breath? It's been a long day. Can we breathe in where we are right now? Can we breathe in the smell of hay that was new mown hay that is parked above us to feed these cows in this as winter comes and these cows are going to be here in this very space? Can we breathe that in? And we know that when we're on a farm like this, we are actually breathing the essence of the work and all the effort that's been done over time by the people who are carrying this place. And so it's remarkable that we're here, and we owe a deep gratitude to you. Thank you very much, Abby, for having us here. Thank you for creating this space, and for bringing the life of this farm into everyone here who's going to be sharing it with you, and we appreciate that. Thanks to Dave and Linley for what they've done here in organizing this. It's no small feat to put on a conference. I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I think Nora probably talked about a bit. How do we cultivate affection? How do we grow a farm and the community around a farm so that we have something different, that whole different paradigm that we want to grow? We live in a beautiful valley in Northern California, North Central California. This is the Capay Valley. We came there about 40 years ago. 40 years ago, I was a pretty long-haired hippie, as my wife was a wife of a hippie. We had one child. We came here. We were looking for a place. My family was not so far away, about 40 miles away, and they were farming conventionally. I grew up on a dairy farm, farming conventionally after many years on a dairy farm, and decided we needed to do something different. This 1980 period was a time when, for those of you who are older, realized that agriculture was in a free fall. It was one of the last great, what they called, economists called the shakeout. We're shaking out excess human capital from agriculture through the engine of free markets. That's what they called it. And it was a terribly tragic time for people in agriculture. People I knew, families I cared about, neighbors, were all being affected by the economics of agriculture and the technologies that they were in fact employing to live. We moved to this valley, and this was an agricultural valley that when we moved there, it was euphemistically known as the No-Pay Valley. Because of that period of time. This was the home to Winton Indians that were native people that lived here for some 10,000 years. So we appreciate being able to live in this place. It was a place that's so different than where we are here. California is a remarkable spot where we farm crops nearly year-round. It's a drier climate. We have high temperatures in the summertime. This year was about 118 for about a week. And in the wintertime, we get about 40 inches of rain. But in that dry, rainy climate that we have, we can grow a lot of different crops. So for the 40 years that we've been here, we've been trying to develop a model farm that would answer some of the social questions and some of the questions of why farms were failing. And could we develop something different? We were looking to throw, in a sense, a life raft to farmers that were failing. We were looking to create ideas about how we might steward the ground differently, how we might tenure it differently, how we can grow a family there differently, so that we could survive there. So Full Belly Farm was the name that was given to our farm by a neighbor who said, when Drew was pregnant with our first child, that looks like a fat belly farm you guys got going there. And it became Full Belly Farm. And my mother looked at that, saw that name, and thought that was perhaps the worst name ever thought about. How would you call yourself? What would people think if you called Full Belly Farm? But that's what we called ourselves. It was based on some of the principles of right livelihood, right action, right relationships, those things that we felt we needed to employ in our tenureship with that place, so that we could grow something very, very different. We've developed a partnership. One of the amazing things that we did with, I think for my best first move was I married a gal who was wiser than I, smarter than I, and definitely more passionate than I about this whole topic. But see, she weathered through those first few years when we were basically just beginning. Like every young farmer in here doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the support, and at that time there were just not a lot of people talking about what organic was. It was 40 years ago. We didn't know how to grow crops organically. It was something learned, and again, something unlearned. I had to unlearn all the things that I knew about agriculture in order to build an organic farm. We're a real organic farm, but what we did, I think, first best thing was the fact that Drew was so passionate, and the work was really hard. But what happened was, I really knew that I had a keeper. Then one day she actually said to me, I've kind of had it here, and this is too much. Having two kids then was too much, and we probably should think about getting a cow. She said, I'd be happy here if you got me a cow. So that's the kind of gal I had, and we got a cow, and we haven't looked back. We still milk a cow, and we provide all people on the farm with a little bit of fresh milk. So Abby, we have the same impulse. You get a cow, and it goes from there. The next significant thing I think we did is when our farm was owned by somebody who was a developer who liked to come up on weekends and drink whiskey and shoot rattlesnakes. He was somebody who had a lot of money. Didn't really care about the nature and the character of what we're doing. The land was in disarray and disrepair, but he liked to drink his whiskey and shoot his rattlesnakes. One night, his wife called us up and said, Chuck died today, do you want to buy the farm? She didn't like the place, but she talked to us because we'd been there a while. We were invested there a little bit. Chuck died, do you want to buy the farm? And so we developed a partnership. We went out and found some friends who are also looking for land. We put together a partnership. That's the second best thing we did. Because if you develop a complex organic farm, I think you need to have a community around you. We moved to a place where the community wasn't there. It didn't exist, and we needed to, in fact, grow a community, and that's the process we've been involved in for the last 40 years. So we partnered with Judith Redmond and her husband then Raul. We have another partner, Raul. I have another partner, Andrew. My kids are now involved. They're partners in the farm. So we have, through the very beginning of the farm, we knew that farming is not an activity that you do on your own. Okay, farming at its best is practiced by a community that's wider and stronger. I met an Amish farmer one time. He said when young farmers want to move to a new area, it's too crowded where they are, and they need to move on in order to find new land and a new community, they take 7 other families with them. Okay, there's a social construct that's created by the wisdom of communities that know how to support the agriculturalist in that community. And it's critical. I mean, when we have 2 kids and a cow that needs to be milked, and one of them's sick, and I'm off at a meeting, and my wife is wondering what's next, we have a neighbor who will come and help. It's a support that you need in order to become an organic farmer. And I think we're failing our young farmers pretty miserably on that point right now. So we need to begin to think about, as a community, how we build stronger networks of farmers by supporting the young farmers that are there. So we've been here for about 40 years. We probably grow 80 different crops. The crops are, we've been from the beginning all organically grown, trying to figure out what that means. When we first started, the university thought that's a good way to make the world starve. There is no way that this is going to work. Drew's major professor called it voodoo agriculture when she said she was marrying this organic farmer. He expressed sympathy and thought that maybe she should try something really different than what she was doing. But we've been figuring out how to grow a complex ecology of many, many different crops. We've tried to figure out how we can put together a system where we're producing year-round, so we can have year-round employment for all of the workers that are on the farm, and we can have a year-round income. I'm not smart enough to go and borrow money and then bet on the crop that's supposed to come in and then pay the bank back. We did that for a few years, and then we realized that you don't need to borrow money if you have cash flow, and the cash flow will provide enough money for the next crop. So we started from the basics. We bought a tractor, bought used equipment. We bought a welder and a cutting torch, and we fixed the things we need to know. And 40 years later, we're pretty different farm than we ever would have envisioned when we started. Everybody's talked about how soil is the fundamental, and the reason we're here today as friends of Real Organic is that there's been great umbrage taken about where organic is going and what in fact hydroponics means to this whole system that we've evolved. Our fundamentals, and what I do, I was going to bring a virtual shovel up here so you guys know I'm handling a shovel, because when you basically walk your farm with people and want to talk about this agriculture we're doing, the first thing you do is you take a shovel and you put it in the soil. And the impact of that is that you can talk about smell and texture, you can engage senses in people who have no idea of the sensory appreciation of what's going on. And yet it's so fascinating, because I think that's part of our deep memory. There's pieces inside us that allow us to remember. They say that you can smell soil, the microbes in soil, at 20 parts per trillion. It's almost the same amount of sensitivity that a shark would have for blood in the water. And we know there are people who talk about sharks and blood in the water and electricity and things like that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. Where the sensitivity is incredible. We have been programmed to understand what soil is supposed to smell like. So when you take a tour, when you take people out, and I take you on my virtual tour with my shovel, the first thing I'm going to do is put my shovel in the ground and show you what's there. I'm going to also and take it and have you feel what's there. You know, you take texture, smell it, experience what's there, because much of what we're talking about when you're on the farm level is not something you're going to quantify every day. You trust that in a teaspoon of soil, there's a billion microbes. In your handful of soil, somebody said more than the people on the earth. I think it's probably more than that. What we don't know is profound, and what we work with every day is our medium to create cultural diversity in the foods we eat. So the way you start is with soil. And I think if that message is clear today, that should be the take home for everyone, that we build from the ground up. This is about an 8.25 pound baby that I had in my hand after a shovel full of soil. You hand that, kind of child, you hand that to people, and you let them smell it, taste it, feel it, see what the texture is, and it's part of the education. When you touch soil, it's amazing, this connection. Again, there's serotonin's released, right? Just touching soil can impact your mood can impact levels of anxiety. I should have probably eaten a quarter pound of soil here before I started. But they can impact so much of what you actually see and feel and is connected to your gut. So soil is the piece that I think that differentiates us and it connects us to all of agriculture around the world. The principles that we're talking about here about organic agriculture and agroecology and permaculture all have the same fundamentals. People around the world touch their soil, and the soil becomes part of them. This sharing of what's happening in your soil means that my footprints on the soil, my interaction with the soil, my creation of the system of soil fertility is something that I'm doing every day. And I'm interacting with it, it's interacting with me. It's creating my response. It's not as simple as a farmer working his soil. The soil is actually, and the environment is actually creating my response to that because it's an intimate thing. You grow with it. It becomes part of who you are. So the soil microbiome is incredibly wild. But as also in every seed that's grown, you know that they talk about 1 billion microbes in every seed that become the inseminator, the piece that informs that seed when that little radical and the seed sprouts. It moves out and it creates a fungal sheath and a sheath of protection around that seed. It's a profound system that shows that there's in every piece of information that's been gathered and that you're using in your farm, there's genetic information, there's exchange. That seed radical goes into the soil and becomes part of what informs the health of that plant, but it also informs in this connection between growing plant and living root what's happening in that soil. So we grow at all times a vast array of cover crops. In the wintertime, we're growing crops that we grow for multiple reasons. We grow them for soil fertility. Our shovel full out there would show a different response in every field that we have cover crops in. We grow them for the beneficial insects that can be there, so we're creating this complex mix of microorganisms, plant tissue, carbon that we're gathering, and we're growing insects and birds and all the things that live in there. So you're creating by your own hand this multi-storied agriculture that is then part of a decay process that you're managing. So we are managing and we are interacting at all times with the functions of our soil, and it creates a richness to what we're doing. It creates the fertility cycle that drives our farm. So Scott talked really eloquently about how these systems can allow you to move away from the use of nitrogen fertilizers that are derived from natural gas. It can reduce all of your inputs. And basically, the systems that we're employing that can be employed around the world are these systems. We can always harvest more sunlight. We can always use plants as the mediator between the sunlight that we're harvesting and the microbial life in the soil. They're gathering carbon, they're gathering nutrients, and they're filling out the whole environment. The farm also has about 300 sheep that we move through the farm. The sheep are part of the digestive process. They enrich soil ecology and soil fertility, and some of these principles are applied throughout the world as you see integrated agriculture moving toward animals as a critical piece of informing the whole system. My son does the shearing. He's also, that's Rye on the left. He's also our mechanic. He's also incredibly versed in all aspects of the farm. He's smart enough to be just about anything, but I think with time, we grew a farm that made an opportunity for him to be there and express his love for this diverse ecology. We impacted his microbiome, so he had a tremendous amount of affection. We have interns that have also been part of the farm since the beginning. Part of our mission, I think, is to grow new farmers. Okay, new farmers need places to learn and would be supported and move to where they can be their own farmers. We've probably had now 10 to 15 people who've grown from 250 or so interns who actually have become farmers and have their own operations. This is my son Rye, he saw in the previous picture. This was him a little bit earlier in his life before we actually had quite as diverse a farm. And what you can see is that he's grounded, yeah. He's being inoculated. He's taking that in. And when you watch kids, what do kids do when you put a baby down on the floor? First thing they do is reach for something to put here. They know this is the mechanism for inoculation. Okay, and that's a good thing. Our gut microbiome is a critical piece of our own mental, physical, and emotional health. So how do you get your kids, how do you create that next generation there? You also seduce them, okay? It's not subtle. What you're trying to do is seduce them with sweet things. So we grow something sweet all the time on the farm, if we can. In the winter, there's citrus. In the summertime, it's melons. In the springtime, it's strawberries. But we are actively seducing people who come to our farm and our kids with sweet things because that's what insects, everybody else responds to. So, and then now this is the next generation. And they're all the same way. Their microbiome has been inoculated with our farm. And if we can create a place that's creative and interesting and fun, we've now taken and seduced them with an affection for the place that they want to be living in. Okay, so, and it's not an insidious thing. We're giving them the opportunities to be whoever they are, but the creative process of each of those grandkids is that they're being impacted by the farm, and we're growing farmers. And perhaps I won't have a farmer there, but they at least have the ability to know that this is a nurturing place, it's a creative place, and it's a place that they can grow their own curiosity in. So there's a picture of their micro. I'm going to trust that. I've never seen that before, but they say that's you have trillions of microbes in your system. That's what we're cultivating with healthy organic farms. This is kind of how we see the universe for so long. We've seen a universe that's a night sky. Right? If you think about the night sky, that's what's been known for centuries. This is what we see. What we now know is that everything is deeper. Okay, the universe now, we know there are billions of galaxies. There are millions, billions of black holes. It's a pulsating, living, breathing organism that we've heretofore have looked at it through one lens. We're now looking at the world with a different lens. We're looking at it with complexity. We're looking at the things that we've never seen before, but we've intuited that were there. Here's strands of mycorrhizal fungi attached to a rootlet where the bacteria and the microbes are being fed by the sugars that the plant is bringing down to them, and they're in turn finding the things that plant needs, a symbiotic relationship. We are farming that relationship. And what we're producing, and all of us, I think, as we ground ourselves in this, we're creating culture. We're creating a human culture. We're creating the very culture in the foods we create that informs everyone's gut. I know. So when we think about food, a lot of times it's about nutrient density or vitamins and minerals, but it's really, in many, many ways, about the culture, the very bacterial, microbial life that's on that, because it's on it, in it, and it's what you consume to inform your gut. So we are basically building deep connections with our customer base and building their affection because they can feel it. I'm a true believer in the fact that we remember more than we realize. When something's right, when a peach is good, or the blueberries are good, or you taste a great tomato, you know that something's right there. No one has to tell you. You can taste that flavor. You remember it. You remember the things that inform your gut because your gut tells you that's where you want to go. Okay, so we are remembering things. So I just have a few more things. I think I'm almost out of time. But one of the group of people that need to be mentioned in terms of how our community is evolving, and we have a complex community of customers, people who visit the farm. We have hundreds of farmers, other farmers who have come to the farm. We talk with people about what we're doing and why we're doing it. But we have a farm worker community of about 80 who work at the farm. We are now actively involved in trying to create a mechanism where they can actually own their homes. So we've helped some farm workers get homes. We think that we can work with a community land trust who will hold the land. They'll be able to build and buy the improvements, but they're connected to the farm, and it's our recognition of how all these pieces, people who've worked on the farm and lived and contributed to the farm, need to be recognized, acknowledged, and made whole by being connected more deeply. So we're growing our community. We're an open farm, a transparent farm. We're looking to create connections, real physical connections where people put their feet on the ground, and we can talk about what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're eating, what they're hearing. We're engaging their senses in a different kind of agriculture. This next weekend, we have Hose Down Harvest Festival, and we're going to have, we're going to have 2,500 people coming. We have 1,500 people who will sleep in our orchard. We have a 13-acre walnut orchard. It's packed. It's like a little city. That happens Saturday night. They're all out there. Sunday morning, they all get in their cars. They leave. We harvest the walnuts. Then about a week later. So we can connect people intimately with the place. We can feed them our food. We can tell them why. And we can grow this affection for a community and an agriculture that absolutely needs people to know where their feet are, to know what they're eating, to remind themselves what they're eating and where it's coming from. It's an unending process. Every farm needs to think about how they can be better at that. Paul was an incredible presentation about how you do that on a macro scale. We're doing it on the micro scale. We think you need to convince every person that you possibly touch with your food. And we need to think about how this larger community supports that young farmer who's out in Iowa by providing more than just a pat on the back, but how interests that have capacity to support new farmers help them build their community. Because it's an uphill slog, and there's no renewable agriculture, there's no sustainable agriculture, there's no long-term agriculture without some joy and without some affection and without the reinvigoration of the communities that exist in every single unique ecosystem that we all represent. So thanks very much.
Thank you for listening to the Real Organic Podcast. Our movement is growing because you're subscribing and sharing these podcasts with your friends. So keep it up and leave us a rating and a review as well so that others can find us. You can find a video version of this interview on our newly designed website, realorganicproject.org, or on our YouTube channel. And you can join us every Thursday for a new episode featuring voices from the organic movement. See you next time.